believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Rendes, also known as Ricky Franz. I messed up my own name. First interview of 2023, and I have a good one for you today. Today we have Michael Sinel, and we talk about health, nutrition, medical foods, what are medical foods, how they can help, and much more. So be ready for a lot of information. Hopefully you'll find some of this information useful. And I'm sure many of you will, and that's why I really do enjoy having these type of shows and these type of discussions, because I feel like somebody out there is going to hear something that could potentially change their lives. So with that said, remember this is a Valley for Valley show, and there's plenty of ways of helping support the show. I get a lot of listeners who reach out. They tell me how much they appreciate the show, how much value they get out of the show, and they can't wait to be in a better financial situation to help support the show. But honestly, don't worry about it. If you're not in a good financial situation, rate the show, review the show, subscribe to the show on all the platforms I'm on. And I'm on many video platforms and all the audio platforms. And check out my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com, for links to all those channels and also links to all the ways you can support the show financially if you're in a good financial position to do so. And some of those ways are supporting me on Patreon. And for as little as $1 a month, you can join us on the next Patreon podcast, which is a podcast I do with my Patreon supporters. I just released one recently. It's always cool. It's a fun hangout with the listeners. And I know I have plenty of really fascinating listeners who are always sending me articles and links to videos and documentaries. If one of you guys want to join us on the next discussion, please join our Patreon. And like I mentioned, for as little as $1 a month, you can join us on the next Patreon podcast. You can also support us using PayPal if you want to send a one-time donation, or if you want to send a one-time donation using Venmo. And of course, like I always tell you guys, all these links will be in the show description, or you can go directly to our website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. You can also send me Bitcoin or Ethereum. You can also support us by checking out our merch store. You can go to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com if you want to go directly to the merch store. And if you go to the merch store, browse around, you can find stuff for kids. You can find hoodies, mugs, t-shirts, tank tops. And the cool thing about getting some merch is that you're advertising Ripple Effect Podcast. You're also getting a hoodie or t-shirt or whatever piece of clothing you might need, and you're supporting the show at the same time. So please check out the merch store. You can also stream or purchase Theory 6 music, which is my solo music project. If you like the intro song for the Ripple Effect Podcast, look up Theory 6. The name of the song is called The Ripple Effect, and you can find that song and all my songs on my EP on all the places you can stream or download music, so definitely check that out. You can also support the show by checking out the Ripple Effect Podcast on Rockfin, and it's a video platform that lets you tip and contribute to content creators. Just by watching the video episodes on Rockfin, you're contributing to the Ripple Effect Podcast. So please check out Rockfin and my channel there. Make sure to subscribe, and many other amazing content creators are on Rockfin. So please check that out. They also have a Rockfin app for Android and Apple phones. So check that out. Other ways of supporting the show is checking out our sponsors. Of course, one of the most important ones is Content Safe, and you might know the creator of Content Safe, Matt Raymer, who's been on the show a bunch of times, also been on my other show, The Union of the Unwanted. And thanks to Content Safe, I just have to upload my videos to one channel, and then within a day or two, they're available everywhere. So definitely check out Content Safe if you're a content creator, if you're a podcaster, YouTuber, streamer. So if you're interested in expanding and being on multiple video platforms, definitely check out Content Safe. Let them know you're a listener of the Ripple Effect Podcast, and Matt will definitely help you out. Another sponsor is the University of Reason. created by Richard Grove, the host of Grand Theft World podcast. And if you're at a crossroads in life, if you're looking to expand on some skills, learn some new skills, maybe connect with another community, a liberty, freedom-minded community, definitely check out the University of Reason. Just by signing up, you can help the Ripple Effect podcast and help yourself. And then the last sponsor, of course, is Element Electrolytes. It's one of my favorite sponsors because it's a product that I use every day. It's a product that I was using way before it was a sponsor. And it's a product that I think can help with a lot of different issues. So it can help with fatigue, muscle soreness, brain fog, so many different things that are due to dehydration. So if you want to find a healthy way of staying hydrated, getting the electrolytes that are crucial to optimize your brain and body, check out Element Electrolytes. It's just a powder mix you put in your water. It tastes awesome. There's no sugar. It won't kick you out of fasting. It won't kick you out of ketosis. It was created by Rob Wolf, who is somebody who's respected in the health and nutrition and paleo keto community. And Rob knew that a lot of people who were doing keto, a lot of people who were fasting, a lot of people who were just dieting were struggling to stay hydrated. It's hard because most of the things you get at a gas station or you buy online, they're full of artificial colors and flavors and sweeteners. But Rob fixed that problem with Element Electrolytes. It only has the stuff you need: potassium, magnesium, sodium. If you listen to past interviews Rob has done either on my show or Joe Rogan's show or any of the many interviews he's done, he explains why he put the amount of magnesium, potassium, and sodium in this product. So it was well thought out. The flavors are awesome. He also has chocolate flavors if you want to stay hydrated while drinking a warm drink like coffee. So definitely check out the links in the show description. Purchasing Element Electrolytes, you can get hydrated, get a product that is awesome and good for you, and also support the Ripple Effect podcast. And if you use the link in the show description, you get a free gift with every purchase. And if you use my link to Element Electrolytes for 12 months, every time you buy Element, you help support the Ripple Effect podcast. But make sure to use the link anyways, because you do get a free gift with every purchase. So keep using that link to keep getting that free gift. That's it, guys. Hopefully everybody had an amazing end of 2022. I'm looking forward to 2023 and putting out tons of amazing shows and getting new guests on the show. And I'm also looking forward to, with your support, of course, getting a little closer to my goal of doing the show full time. So thanks again, everybody who contributes, everybody who has contributed, everybody who helps spread the word so the people who are in good financial situations can help support the show and stop being cheap asses. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. Right into it, and we could open up with this because it is
that's fine.
It is, a topic that I think is important. So when I first started doing my show, I was really I love the open source idea. James Corbett from the Corbett Report is one of the first guests that were on my show, and somebody that I'm a big fan of. And I love this idea of open source, like get the information out there. Who gets the clicks or who gets all the attention or what website gets the traffic, to me, isn't really important. It's about getting these conversations and these ideas out there. And then I was never really into like advertisements, commercials, anything like that. And honestly, it was like a little bit of pressure from the listeners who would be like, hey, we want to support the show. Let's, give us some ways of supporting the show. And a lot of times I would talk about products I use or things I do or whatever. And so Rob Wolf, I'm sure you're familiar with Rob Wolf. He was on my show, and we were talking about his. I've been a longtime fan of Rob Wolf, and I've had a lot of people in that world on the show, like Dr. Dominic D'Agostino has been on a few times, Dr. Thomas Seyfried. So he, after the show, he's like, "Hey, do you want to, do a sponsor?" And I'm like, "Well, it's somebody it's something I like. It's created by somebody that I like, and I've been following his work for time. So why not?" And then I kind of started getting a little bit more open to the idea of like, okay, if there's products out there that can help people and that I believe in, and why not? I've become much more open to it. Obviously, if it's a product that, but especially when the health and nutrition world, that's something I've always been super passionate about. So first guests have been like Dr. Brzezinski and the Dr. Gregory A. Smith, who did the documentary American Addict. And I've always kind of been really into health and nutrition and fan of like people like Gary Taubes and Mark Sisson and stuff like that. So it's been a blast to kind of share some of this information with people, because I do believe some of the stuff that you're going to share with the listeners today, it's stuff that can change their lives immediately. And it's stuff that can, I do shows on history. I do shows on geopolitics. I do shows on the JFK assassination. I do shows on so many different topics that I'm intrigued with. But sometimes I feel like, these are the most important type of shows, because these are the ones that can improve somebody's well-being, their quality of life now. They can hear something that's like, you know what, I can do that, or maybe I should change that. And immediately, it can improve their life. So it's awesome feeling knowing that I can use this platform to do that. But enough about me. Obviously, I started a podcast because I don't know when to shut up. But enough about me. For people who are listening who don't know who you are, don't know some of your background, want to learn a little bit about your journey and your origin story, share. Go back as far as you would like. Include or exclude anything you would like, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, so glad to be here. So, yeah, grew up in New York City and decided at a young age to go to medical school, become a doctor. Trained in New York City. Did my medical school and my residency in New York. My residency was at New York Hospital, Cornell, and Sloan Kettering, and then I was always sort of oriented towards a holistic approach. So I picked a field, physical medicine and rehab and pain management, because I was an undergraduate psych major and I always was interested in the mind-body approach and just, holistic approaches to care, sort of how I would treat my own health. So trained in an area that was really very holistic. I came out to Los Angeles back in '89, I was running the department at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, treating lots of musculoskeletal pain. My field is actually broad, so I treated way more than that, everything from strokes and head injuries and spinal cord injuries, but moved more and more into outpatient musculoskeletal, primarily in the area of spine, so a lot of neck and back pain, herniated disc, spinal disorders of every sort, and ended up in a partnership with a number of spine surgeons in a spine institute in Los Angeles. And yeah, so sorry about that. Sorry about the doorbell ringing. I have some workers I didn't know were coming. Yeah, and then I wrote a couple books on back pain because I was seeing a lot of people come in with back problems. We were in a prestigious place. I was a UCLA professor for 30 years, assistant clinical professor. And, our spine institute, which was in Beverly Hills, had really people coming in from all over the country for second opinions. We were one of the top spine institutes in the country. And I saw an enormous amount of people who had spine surgeries they never needed, like with real bad chronic pain problems and with disability, basically, many of them at young ages. And they were coming to look at potentially another spine surgery, sometimes a second, sometimes a third, sometimes a fifth or sixth. And they were being told that, and they'd come to us. And I'm looking back on their records and talking to them and seeing, wow, this person probably never needed a surgery in the first place. So, talked to a couple of my partners, one of them who was the chief at Cedars-Sinai, a spine surgeon. I said, listen, this is crazy. There's so many people out there with these horrific disabilities and pain problems that they sort of never needed to have in the first place. I mean, and so I wrote my first book called Win the Battle Against Back Pain. And one of my co-authors was my partner, who was a spine surgeon, because me as a physical medicine rehab expert, pain management expert, saying surgery is not needed, people are going to question it like, oh, you're not the surgeon. So my co-author was a top spine surgeon. And, we were putting out a message really to tell people it can be very dangerous to see doctors if you have back pain problems and neck pain problems. Like, that could be the most dangerous thing you could do, is get into the medical profession. And I say that on the one hand, having great respect for the profession and the wonderful advances it made, but also because, my 30-year journey in medicine really showed me a dark side that was always very challenging as a practitioner. and a lot of it had to do, at least in the system in the US, the economic motivations of how things are done, and the training system. I mean, we have a medical education system that's still 35 years old, 30 to 35 years old. Like, what else do you know that hasn't changed in that long? I don't know anything, so we're still educating doctors with a couple hours of nutrition, even though we know nutrition is really critical. And a lot had to do with medical devices in the pharmaceutical industry, which are set up in a Western model of disease to treat symptoms, and often get you dependent upon medications that you stay on for your life to regulate symptoms. And, in my own lifestyle, which is how I try to treat my own patients, I really realized there's a lot we could do for ourselves in managing our lifestyle that are going to keep us healthy. And even when we're ill, often prevent us from needing, surgeries, pharmaceuticals. And that being said, look, I recommended surgery in a subset of patients. I recommended medications. However, I did that when I thought they were necessary and when I thought things cannot be managed adequately by more holistic and alternative approaches that had no risk for the patients, which is what I always used in myself. So I got very into yoga and meditation myself. Then I got certified and taught it in the medical school at UCLA, both yoga therapy and mindfulness meditation as an approach to health, and also for the medical students who needed it for their own health, right? And then, I was learning from my patients practicing in LA and Beverly Hills, getting exposed to everything you could imagine, acupuncture, hypnosis, Reiki therapy, energy healing, everything. And I was intrigued when I'd see people get better. I talked to the practitioner, I learned a bit about supplements. I was eating healthy and saw how shifting my diet and the role of nutrition changed my own health. So yes, I went on a journey basically to really integrate alternative practices and complementary practices and try to keep people in therapies that have the least risk for them and the most benefit. I mean, everything as a doctor, every decision you make is basically a risk benefit analysis, right? So, and then I came across these nutritional medical foods, and that blew me away on this complete journey. At the time, they were prescription only, and that's really what I'm excited to bring to the world now. I mean, they were natural molecules like supplements, but not supplements, because they were regulated by the FDA and they had big science behind them. And the ones I came across had human clinical trials in big areas like pain and inflammation and sleep. And I started prescribing these encapsulated medical foods for my patients, and they were getting reimbursed and patients were doing well. And I was able to, with natural nutritional solutions, reduce dosages of prescription medications and, have much lower side effect profiles for my patients. So that became an exciting journey, and I was really determined to scale. The company that created these was prescription only, $400 a bottle, reimbursed by insurance. And, the FDA ultimately, I think in about 2016, said no longer prescription only, and the insurance market dried up. The company was trying to get Medicare approval, which would have been great for these products, frankly, but it's a very big political lift and very complex. And, here I am 6 years later. I mean, I acquired the company, brought the retail price extraordinarily down to $60 a bottle. I'm giving your clients nice discounts, and really just want to get this out to the population because, our lead product, Theramine, for chronic pain and inflammation, has over 30 million doses safely prescribed and has published studies against the most common anti-inflammatories, ibuprofen and naproxen, showing we could decrease inflammatory markers, showing good results for pain, showing you could decrease your prescription or over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, even if you combine them with this and have a greatly reduced dose, which would practically eliminate a vast majority of the side effects. So I'll take a breather for a second, and that's what gets me here today. I'm really passionate about spreading the news on encapsulated medical foods, which are a giant category, and I could go on to define it what they are, because everyone knows supplements and everyone knows pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, medical foods, it's one of those terms that you're not quite sure what it is, right? Is it food? Is it medicine? Is it, I mean, it's both, right? And food can be medicine. I mean,
Food
that
is medicine.
food is medicine. Oh yeah, who's that the philosopher who said that, right? The famous quote, let food
Yes.
thy medicine and medicine be thy food, or something along those lines. But it's yeah, I mean, it's there's so many ways to optimize your body. I'm a huge fan of finding natural alternative methods of doing things, and a lot of times we try to reinvent the wheel, but if you look at it historically, we had a lot of things right, and then we've kind of in the process of trying to reinvent the wheel, we've messed things up. There's that book, Learn to Run, I believe it's called, about how Nike started putting the cushioning in the heel of shoes, and how it messed up our mechanics, because it was first time in history that you could run heel first and not hurt yourself. And it's funny because as a sports fan, I'm a big soccer fan, basketball fan, and growing up, I'm from the East Coast, also I'm from Massachusetts, and right, I live a little Portuguese community outside of Springfield, Mass, and where the Basketball Hall of Fame is. And you go back and you see all these old pictures of these basketball players wearing these completely flat Converse, and you're like, how do they play all these? And then it hit me. It's like, oh, because that's the way you're designed to run, like on the ball of your feet. And when you're on a flat shoe, your mechanics are correct and working properly. But then once you put that giant cushioning on and have all these complex sneakers, all of a sudden it messes up your mechanics. So it actually became counterproductive. It's same thing with I'm a big fan of the knees over toes guy. He's kind of bringing back. Yeah, he's interesting. He's been oh my God, what the hell? I'm having a brain fart. What his full name is, but everybody knows him better as a knees over toes guy. He's been on the Rogan podcast. He's been around. I've actually been in contact with him, trying to get him on too, because I love this idea of like rethinking, the way we're working out our legs and all that stuff. And he came up with this, or I shouldn't say he came up with it, because like I said, a lot of times it's old practices and treatments and ways of doing things that are kind of rediscovered. But he discovered that people used to train knees over toes. And what it does when you do that is, and it's you're creating that natural movement of your body. Because if you look at somebody when they're jumping or running, your knees are over your toes. Or you look at, I have two little ones, I have a son and a daughter. When they've learned to walk, they were always on the ball of their feet. That's kind of the way you're supposed to be, heel up, kind of a ball of your feet, and your knees are naturally kind of on your toes. So he started training this way, and because he had really bad joints, started training this way, and basically strengthened his knees and strengthened his legs to the point where he was a awful high school athlete to getting a scholarship to, I believe, a Division I college for basketball. And he, when he showed up, his strength and conditioning coach is like, hey, I love what you're doing with the knees over toes stuff, but none of that crap here. And he's like, I got a scholarship because of this, because of this training. And so he ended up making, similar to yourself, making it his life work to try to get this information out there, because he believed he could help a lot of people who are dealing with chronic pain. And it's yeah. And then also John Sorno, who I know you were a friend of. I've talked about his book Mind Over Back Pain about 1 billion times on this podcast throughout the years.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a huge fan of that whole concept. I mean, it really, and the reason why it's so important is because so often we talk about the mind and body like they're disconnected, like they're two different things. And I think, his book and his research and his message really reminds us how much it's connected. And Wim Hof with his breathing methods. I mean, there's so many ways of naturally optimizing your body. And then, maybe surgery or some medical, medicine or whatever being a last resort. But unfortunately, we live in a world where it's a first resort. It's like, I have my mother is old school. She's I was born in Portugal. I came here when I was 4, and I would go to have to translate for my parents. I still do when they go to the doctors. And my mother is upset if she goes to a doctor visit and doesn't get something. Like, I'm like, I'm like, be happy. You don't like, have you seen the side effects on most of these things? I'm like, unless it's a last resort, you shouldn't, you shouldn't be leaving every doctor visit with some prescription, but that's kind of the world we live in. And I forget which comedian said it, that they grew up in a world where, a doctor visit started with, are you on any prescription drugs? And today, the first question is, how many prescription drugs are you on? But
Right.
it's drastically changed. So I'm
Yeah.
fan on some of those things.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought up Sarno because he was my first mentor, and the mind body interaction is endless. And, I think many people, when they're in the right mindset, the body responds. I'm friends with Joe Dispenza, and he's doing great work in healing people through meditation techniques. And it's a very big aspect. The med foods, actually, these particular products are tie exactly into that because they're working on regulating neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are the signaling molecules of our brain. And it turns out that in chronic diseases, like if we take chronic pain and inflammation, there's an increased metabolic demand on the body, right? Like in most chronic diseases, the metabolism, cellular metabolism has higher demands on it because of the disease state. So within the increased metabolic demands of the body, there's a relative nutrient deficiency at the cellular level of certain neurotransmitters because the neurotransmitter production is not kept up to meet the increased neurometabolic demands of the disease state. And that's the whole science behind these encapsulated medical foods. We have a patented messenger amino acid technology. And with these amino acid precursors in the technology, we create the neurotransmitters. So we're producing the neurotransmitters to meet the deficit. And when we balance the neurotransmitters at the cellular level, and the body comes into balance, the body will do its natural healing, miraculous mechanisms will be brought into place because the body is the best healer of itself, as we know. But, that's why proper nutrition is key. The medical foods in these chronic disease states, it turns out you can't just eat enough amino acids to get to these points. So we're showing that we could assist the body in its natural healing by producing the natural neurotransmitters of the body by providing these amino acid precursors and certain botanicals with our technology. Then we regulate the cell, we optimize it nutritionally, right, into balance, and the body naturally heals. So that's the basis, and that ties right into the brain and nervous system and body all being one system that you want to optimize so that body could be in its best healing state at all times. So exercise, nutrition, mind state, those are critical for everyone and always the most important thing. What we see in people, though, with chronic sleep and, chronic inflammatory pain problems is they're still having nutrient deficiencies often at a cellular level. And that's what these encapsulated medical foods are. I used to put people on this theramine who are on lifetimes of ibuprofen and many non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and having gastrointestinal side effects, but needing them to manage pain and taking opioids. And I'd be able to transition them on this and reduce the dose. And all of a sudden they're not having gastritis and reflux and, sometimes off the anti-inflammatories, sometimes way down on their opioids even. A friend of mine who's a top pain specialist in the country wrote an article for one of the biggest pain publications, Practical Pain Management, that medical foods should be a first-line treatment for chronic pain patients. Because if you have something that's perfectly safe, these are amino acids and botanicals, and we have human clinical data showing it works, and we have 40 plus million doses over 10 years. Why would anyone not try it if they have chronic pain and inflammation, chronic sleep disorders? We have them for chronic fatigue and cognitive decline. We have them for obesity too. Have them for neuropathy, a natural appetite suppressant for obesity. There are meds for obesity, prescription meds, but many of them, again, have many aggressive side effects that could be dangerous. So if you could have a natural med that's going to regulate neurotransmitters and adjust your mood and decrease cravings through neurotransmitters, and we do that with Aptrim and Aptrim D. So yeah, so I think these are really important for people to understand. I want to educate practitioners because I'll go into the FDA definition of a medical food. I think it's very important because, again, everyone knows pharmaceuticals. So pharmaceuticals are either over the counter or prescription. No matter what, they all have lots of side effects, you know, some worse than others, depending on the person. You may have a certain genetic predisposition. Elderly certainly are much more susceptible to, you know, serious side effects. And then supplements, we all know the world of supplements. I mean, in your lifetime, you've seen supplements. They've grown into supposedly like a $70 billion industry internationally now. I mean, and it keeps going because people are discouraged with pharma because they're scared of the side effects and the drug interactions. So supplements are natural molecules, you know, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, botanicals, right? But they're not regulated by the FDA. And the reality is that there are many very good supplements, and I take a handful, but it's very hard for the public to discern because it's somewhat of a marketing game, and more importantly, maybe the manufacturing is not limited. So they don't. There was an article bunch of years ago in Time magazine, a cover article on the supplement industry. I think they took 100 different brands off the shelf and found something like over 70% didn't have what they claimed on the label from ingredient perspective. So that's really scary that you don't know what you're getting. So, you know, supplements could be good, but they're not able to treat diseases per the FDA. They can't make claims. So medical foods are this really interesting in-between category where the ingredients are all natural. So that's like a first criteria. The ingredients fall in a category called GRAS, generally recognized as safe, GRAS. So that includes vitamins, minerals, amino acids, certain botanicals, right? The things that we all take and we know are safe, right? The second thing is certified GMP manufacturing. And that's a big thing, just like pharmaceutical grade manufacturing. So it's on the label. These manufacturing facilities have to meet certain FDA standards of quality, you know, and the label has to represent what you're putting on it, which isn't true. You can make supplements in your garage and put them out there and put what you want in there, and people are not going to necessarily know. So GMP manufacturing, GRAS ingredients. The third one is they require physician supervision. They say that because you're managing a disease state. So if you have, you know, real bad chronic pain disorder with inflammation, you're taking narcotics and you go on the med foods, the physician should be managing it. So he could slowly regulate the dosing of the medical food and decrease the dosing of your pharmaceutical med. So there's a labeling requirement of physician supervision. But you could talk to your physician about it and tell him you're on this, and he could hopefully contact us and we could guide him in the use of these, although it's very simple. I would just start people on a medical food and then slowly try to cut their prescription medicines as their symptoms are going down. It was that simple. The fourth definition, which is the big one, which is really the science of this, is you have to prove scientifically that you're meeting a nutrient demand in a particular disease that is not being met by a normal diet. So as I said to you, most diseases, there's a relative nutrient deficiency of neurotransmitters, neuropathy, chronic pain and inflammation, sleep. So we are meeting the nutrient deficiency at a cellular level in these disease states where you can't just eat grams of amino acids and have the body produce it. And that's the high scientific threshold for medical foods that most supplements don't make, most don't reach. Most supplements are based on theoretical science, theoretical scientific mechanisms of biochemistry. These medical foods that we're offering to the public have published studies against some of the biggest pharmaceuticals, head-to-head studies with ibuprofen and naproxen for pain and inflammation. For people with chronic sleep, we have a product, Centra PM, that's studied against trazodone, which is one of the biggest sleep medicines on earth. You know, and we have studies for everything from, you know, again, our appetite suppressant, neuropathy, fibromyalgia, PTSD, with a variety of things. But again, we're promoting the body's natural state of healing by optimizing the nutrition providing neurotransmitter balance with amino acid precursors. Sorry, it's a mouthful, I know.
No, but we need to, kind of talk about all of it and discuss all of it so people have a good understanding of it. And yeah, that's kind of the pros and cons of the supplement world, is that, anytime you do talk about, supplementing with a vitamin or herb or whatever, you do read these articles where they highlight, I mean, it is a huge issue in the supplement world. I think sometimes these articles are kind of used to kind of discredit supplements and natural remedies, as a whole. And like you said, the body can naturally do some amazing things. That's why I think athletes a lot of times, or people like myself who have played sports and been a gym rat most of their life, we have a stronger belief on what the body's capable of than maybe the typical doctor who maybe has been more of a bookworm most of his life and hasn't known people who are supposedly never supposed to walk again, or never supposed to play sports again, or never supposed to do this or that, and then they're like, you know what, I can't live without being some type of physical lifestyle, and end up doing something that that the doctor said that was impossible, or not, that they weren't capable of. So you hear a lot of those type of stories where people say, hey, my doctor said never to play sports again, and then they slowly start rehabbing, getting stronger,
So,
eating better and exercising, and maybe even doing yoga, which I think is kind of a underrated way of for recovery and core strengthening, that I don't think is utilized as much as it could be, because of the fact that people think yoga, they think like housewives and and yoga pants. But I know that Diamond Dallas Page, who was he was a WCW, and I believe he was in WWE for a while, created is it Diamond Yoga or something? He created some yoga for athletes and people, and he's helped a lot of people who, obviously wrestlers, have deal with some serious back pain with all the throwing their bodies through tables and all that type of stuff. And he's helped a lot of people with that stuff. So there's a lot of amazing ways you can help your body fix itself, and really that should be, like we keep saying, because it's so important, it should be the first resort. We should be also proactive. I'm a big believer of, like, don't wait till you have gut issues to start drinking kombucha or taking probiotics. Don't wait till don't wait till you have back pain to start doing yoga. Don't wait till try to be proactive and try to get ahead of the curve. Take care of your body, and typically, if you give your body the fuel and the exercise and the things that it needs, it, like you said, it takes care of itself.
Yeah, I mean, if everyone was growing up doing yoga and meditating a bit, managing their stress, the 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 healthcare curve would shift dramatically, to a healthy population, instead of population that's in a crisis with the healthcare system and obesity is rising. I mean, I recommended yoga for everyone with that. I mean, a vast majority. In my books, I was suggesting yoga as the first line treatment for a lot of back pain, because it also relaxes the nervous system. Again, you're working with the body and you're increasing flexibility and core strength, and you're increasing general strength, right? But you're also relaxing the nervous system if you're practicing real yoga. And most of us have a dysregulation of our nervous system. And again, that is why meditation is a great cool tool. And that is why mindset is critical, because, it's quite obvious. And I remember when I first dropped in with Joe Dispenza, it was like the most straightforward messaging he was giving is like, obviously stress causes diseases. I mean, we put people in high stress situations and we see all sorts of things. People get headaches and neck pain and high blood pressure, and the list goes on, right? But so if stress could cause disease, obviously things the opposite side of that, which is love, right, at the highest level, and positive mindset and nature and community, they're all going to combat disease, and they're going to change our biology. So there's more and more studies on this. I just did a week with Tony Robbins and a date with Destiny, and it was, again, remarkable how there was a big study. The Stanford team there was talking about the research they had just done showing, Tony's work versus antidepressants, right? Showing, people doing better often that didn't respond to antidepressants and responding to, his workshop, A Date with Destiny, which is really about shifting your mindset and your state, which is also your biological state. So, that stuff's all Cree. And again, what we're doing with the medical foods is, again, meeting nutrient deficiencies and giving the body a bump to heal naturally by balancing neurotransmitters. So it plays into, but lifestyle is definitely number one. If I had to say, the number one thing is mindset, because stress is, I would say, by far the biggest killer in our society. So stress, loneliness, obesity, these are things. So if you could have good mindset, good social connections, and I know it's easier said than done. So I'm not out there like, just go make a lot of friends and just go start eating great and exercise. There's a lot of people who don't have access to great food, and it's not affordable for great people, and are overworked. So, but we're trying to offer one tool that's very important for people that we try to make extremely affordable, which is nutrients in the medicine in the form of encapsulated medical foods.
Well, when you look at the placebo effect, right? I mean, it's kind of a example of how mindset can change, the way your body reacts or the way it heals. I mean, people they've done many of studies showing that the placebo effect works. If you think you're being healed, you can heal yourself. And I love that quote. If you change the way you look at things, what you look at changes. A lot of times, like you said, you don't have to even change something physically in your life. You just have to change how you look at those things, and it can help. My son plays soccer, and I always we talk about sports psychology a bit, and how the difference between a Cristiano Ronaldo when he's at the penalty kick line and ready to take a big shot, and the guy who panics and misses, is that Cristiano Ronaldo's mindset. He thinks that he's the best player in the world, and he's going to make that goal, and he's thinking about all the success that's going to come with it, and how great he is, and how he, this poor goalie who has to go up against him. And then you have the other guy who has self-doubt, who is panicking and having a anxiety response, and it's like, it's the exact same ball, it's the same size goal, it could be the exact same goalie. What changes? Just the way you're looking at the situation. So I'm a big believer of implementing that in my own life, and just kind of doing those type of things of just changing your mindset. I know we scratched the surface just slightly on mind over back pain, but for people who heard us mention Dr. John Swarno, but we didn't really get into his concept too much. What is mind over back pain? What is this idea that some of the back pain that he was seeing was actually not physical?
Yeah, so it's actually it's not necessarily that it's not physical. So what it is that when you're suffering with pain, there's an emotional component to it, right? And much of pain is how people are relating to it. I mean, and also the brain could only process so many sensory inputs at a time. So when there's pain, if you're putting all your attention on your pain, but you're nervous about it, and you're panicked, and you're fearful about it, what it may do, it's going to increase your experience and your emotions of fear and confusion, which are really common in back pain. Am I going to be able to play sports again? Will I need surgery? They accelerate the body's reactions to pain. When it accelerates, a bad word. What happens is there's a processing of pain besides what happens, in the body and the nervous system. And I'll use an example. If you stub your toe, right? Everyone stubbed their toe, probably. It's painful. You bang it, there's local tissue damage, there's these chemical mediators that come in, and there's swelling, and you're like, oh crap, I stubbed my toe. Ooh, maybe you limp a little bit. But so these messages from those nerve cells at the toe, the pain fibers are bringing signals up through the spinal cord and into the brain, and your brain is interpreting it, and your brain's saying, wow, I stubbed my toe. That may suck, but it's going to go away. So the brain's immediately reassuring it, right? And if you're busy doing something, you're likely going to be able to go back to it because there's all these modulations that happen at different places in the brain. You know, you're not scared and you're not confused. You know exactly what happened. You know how it's going to end, right? So the brain is saying, okay, and I'm giving you sort of a simplistic overview. Your nervous system, your autonomics, or your fight, flight reaction is starting to calm down. It's not kicking in like, oh my God, will I be disabled, right? So as the nervous system calms down, and I'm going to use simple terms here for the sake of the podcast, and your brain reassures itself, the cognitive understanding of what happened lessens the perception of pain to the point where your mind, which can only filter so much information, hypothetically could go back to doing what it was doing at work, or if you're shopping in a store, can continue. You may limp a few steps, and it's not like there's still not an inflammatory mechanism in the area, and the toe may not swell a little, but you're not experiencing suffering to a great degree. However, if you bend over to tie your shoe and your back goes into a spasm, right? And you're like, wow, you know, I'm locked up with my back, you know, that could be like something that you knew happened to your Uncle Harry, who's now in a wheelchair because he ended up with 2 back surgeries, and it started that way. But when that happens to you and you're healthy, and you're like, oh my God, what happened? So it's like confusion, it's fear. Those things will accelerate the body's experience of the pain and often amplify the pain signal itself, because there's all these signals going up and down the spinal cord from the peripheral nerves, from the pain fibers, and they're modulated at every step. And as we get more chronic pain, it's more modulated in the brain than in the periphery. So chronic pain, the vast majority, in a vast majority of chronic pain, which is more than 6 months or 3 months, depending on the definition, right? But in a vast majority of it, what you're experiencing has to do with how your brain is interpreting and modulating the signals. So I could give 2 people the exact same stimulus, you know, if we were rating it as a 1 to 10 scale, and I say I put a 3 on there and we leave it. Some people can be experiencing it as a 9 out of 10, and some will experience it as a 1 out of 10, right? And that may not have to do with, you know, it's not like perfectly correlated stimulus response. There's many factors. So the mind-body approach to pain has to do with, you know, you could have pain, and if a fire alarm goes off, you're forgetting about your back pain, right? So you get distracted. The brain has a certain capacity, emotional capacity. And John Sarno said, hey, a lot of pain is being caused by underlying factors, the pain serving a role to distract you from underlying emotions. So sorry about the noise. Is that still audible for you? Because I could probably stop it, or is it too bad?
No, it's all right. I mean, is it going to continue? Am I going to hear a lot of it?
I hope not. So did I?
If you what you could do to help is that maybe, because I could do the clean up the audio, but the video, if you want to just mute your own feed when you know, when you can, that way
okay, I'll do that. Perfect. Yeah. When you're speaking, I'll mute my feed. So anyway, John Sarno approach is that emotions play into pain, fear plays into pain, confusion. Pain often serves as a distraction for all the other stresses in your life. Stress could cause pain. You really hate your job. You know, you hate your marriage potentially. You have underlying rage. It's expressing in your body physiologically. So instead of focusing on that, think psychologically, get back to your activity, get back to your life. The pain is not dangerous to you. And you know, I worked with him for a few years and used that technique forever in my patients, and many, many people, that's all they needed to get better. Tens of thousands of people got better just reading his books, you know? So that's sort of an encapsulation. Think psychologically, not physically. Emotions could accelerate and be responsible for worsening pain. Stress could cause pain, but it isn't in your head, because you could actually be getting back spasms from stress, right? And worsening them, and there's signals coming up. So sort of complex regarding the physiologic mechanisms.
Yeah,
Does
but
that help clarify it?
it does, but it's also, I think, really important because, like you said, I would hear about Dr. John Sorno talking to patients about this idea, and like you said, a huge majority of people would leave his office feeling better immediately, knowing that that maybe like you said, it's not that it's not physical, but it's not maybe all physical, and maybe these other stresses and anxiety, managing that can help help with some of that pain instead of letting it amplify that pain. So it's, and like you said, we all kind of know, and we've heard it said before, that stress can lead to health issues. So I mean, basically, stress is not, it doesn't start as a physical thing, but it can lead to physical issues. So that's kind of a understanding and kind of admitting that there is a mind body connection, and that there's something there. I think a lot of things are like that. I don't know if you're familiar with the like Rat Park experiment with addiction, where they had this, and I'm sorry for the listeners who've heard me tell this story a bunch of times, but I think it is important. And they had these rats where they put cocaine or heroin in the water, and they kept coming back to the water and eventually died. And then these I think it was Canadian scientists or psychologists decided that, like, hey, let's create this thing called Rat Park, this giant warehouse where we let the rats run around and live and give it its natural habitat, and let's recreate the experiment and see what happens. And then the rats didn't, or came to the water once, went away, and never came back. And then they realized, like, oh, the cage itself has become a part of the experiment, that it was a mental thing. It wasn't about quantifying how addictive heroin or cocaine is. It was the rat was unhappy, and it was trying to self-medicate with the substance, and then you give it its natural habitat, and it doesn't need that substance. And I think we are, for lack of a better term, pleasure monkeys. We kind of we listen to music that make us happy. We exercise because it improves our mental health. We constantly are doing things that bring us some sense of happiness. And if you don't have that in your life, or you don't have some organic place and healthy place to get that happiness, and you have some emptiness inside, then maybe that's why those substance like street drugs end up being your way of self-medicating. So I think a lot of our own personal issues do start almost internally, and can and we need to kind of almost start there, and then fix our external physical bodies by working internally first.
Sure. At a very basic level, if you can imagine, someone with chronic back pain, or they go to the doctor and see a herniated disc, and the doctor's like, well, this could end up pressing your nerve, and you could end up being paralyzed. And I used to hear patients come in with stories, and I would see them and go, you know what? That's like really something that we showed in studies. In 5 years, it gets better on its own. You're probably better in a month or two. That fear, that what they heard from the other doctor was accelerating the signal in their brain, or amplifying the signal in their brain, to the point where their pain was worse and their suffering was worse, and the confusion. So just me reassuring them would actually make people, you know what, you're fine, take it easy a couple of days. You could actually go back to yoga this week and take it slow, and you'll be playing ball in a few weeks. And it was like, wow, that's it. I all needed to hear that. The brain shut down how much attention it was paying to it. The fear response and the confusion response went down. The suffering went down to minor. We all have some aches and pains if we're tuning into it. And what is yoga? Breathe through it, right? You're not panicking. So yeah, I mean, the mind is mediating everything, and it's part. It's all one, right? The mind body connection. So,
And I think, and what you said is true, and I've heard it before about this idea of, like, so your neural pathways that send other messages, like tell your body to move or whatever, are the same roads that are used to send the signal that you have pain. So like a lot of times during the day when you're active or busy, it seems like the pain's not there. And then a lot of times people are like, oh, at night the pain's worse. And it's like, well, it's because you're not doing anything. And now you can kind of focus on it. And those pathways are available to send those pain signals. So sometimes just like you said, almost ignoring it and can improve it, just like get, stay busy, and
Right.
so that, yeah, that's all fascinating. So in regards to your products, I did make you a co-host, but I can screen share and go to your website. Here's some of the products you offer.
That'd be great.
Well,
Yeah, Theramine. Theramine's the biggest, the one up top, and that's the one that has the studies with ibuprofen and naproxen, and that's indication is for the dietary management of chronic pain and inflammation. Tretpidone is for dietary management of osteoarthritis. We always say dietary and nutritional management because these are in the category of nutrition, right? Procura is for neuropathy, which is a very difficult disease. And, there are pharmaceutical interventions, gabapentin, Neurontin, but they have a lot of side effects and are intolerable for a lot of patients. Centra AM is great. My chief medical officer uses that instead of coffee in the morning. It's for fatigue and cognitive decline, but it really has a number of people feel very alert and clear in their thinking. So that's a morning pill. And then Centra PM is for sleep. We have two for sleep. Centra PM is the one that was studied against trazodone, which is one of the most widespread prescription sleep medicines in the world. And this is for the dietary management of sleep, often associated with depression. And Gabadone is for sleep associated with some anxiety. But both of them work fairly well in sleep. They regulate the autonomic nervous system. Again, that's the fight, flight response versus the relaxation response, and balance them through neurotransmitters. And Aptrim is our appetite suppressant. And again, this is really great to have a natural dietary approach to reduce cravings and improve mood that are all associated with obesity. So that's a natural appetite suppressant. And I've prescribed a majority of these products, the sleep and pain categories in my practice because I had a musculoskeletal pain practice. So I had quite a number of people on both Theramine for pain and Centra, the beauty of these is there's no drug interactions. There's really no side effects to speak of. Some people will get a little bit of a dry mouth and a little nausea when they start it. I recommend taking it before meals. And they don't interact with whatever drugs you're taking at all. So that's beautiful if you have to be on prescription drugs. And I do tell people, give them about a month to work because, again, you have a depleted level of some of these neurotransmitters at a cellular level, and it takes a little time. Varies patient to patient, but takes time to build up the proper levels of neurotransmitters in the body re-regulate to enhance the natural healing ability.
Yeah, and honestly, if people feel nauseous, I mean that's just common with vitamins and supplements in general. If you take them on an empty stomach, I've always been super sensitive to that, where I have to take my vitamins and supplements with food. If not, then I feel really nauseous. So yeah, that's a good piece of advice, just in case people think it's the supplement specifically. It's not the supplement sometimes specifically that is making you nauseous. Sometimes it's just taking any supplement on an empty stomach. So yeah, that's definitely good advice. And people, so the website's medicalfood.com.
Medicalfoods.com, quite easy, and I can be reached, Dr. Mike at medicalfoods.com. So, and I encourage people, if they are suffering from any of these symptoms, which is super common, they could have their physicians reach out to me if they want to talk about, I'm taking prescription sleep medicines or taking opioids and anti-inflammatories, and I'd like to consider these. I'm glad to talk to their physicians, but, we're giving you an online link to sell them, at a great discount. I believe 20% to people who come through your website. So,
yeah, I'll put the link in the show description so people can can easily click on it. If you're watching the video or listening to the audio, you can just go in the show description and find the link. And also, yeah, so the best way of contacting, if people have questions, is it through the website?
Yes, through the website, medicalfoods.com. We have customer service. We have info there. All the clinical science and human clinical studies are on the website. It's pretty deep. And I think people will, hopefully get educated about a category that's really important that we believe is going to help change medicine significantly, which is really science-based targeted nutrition and working with neurotransmitters through a messenger amino acid technology. I think this is really critical. I'm passionate to educate practitioners. We're going very deep now in the chiropractic space and the physical therapy world, psychologists, because we want all these practitioners who don't have prescription pads to be able to offer these to their patients, or at least don't write for pharmaceuticals. And are also, everyone should be oriented more towards natural approaches to pain that are dealing with root causes and balancing the body to heal. So,
a quick question before I let you go, because I'm always curious on doctors like yourself, people who kind of grew up looking at medicine the same, the way that they're taught at the university, and then eventually go a little bit against the grain and become much more open-minded to these alternative views. What do you think led to that? Was it somebody like Dr. Sforno, his work, or was it somebody else? Was there a book? Was there a documentary? Was there a specific doctor that kind of widened your view on the way we look at medicine?
Yeah, it's any and all. So as I told you, I just tried to be open-minded and learn from my patients. And I didn't realize when I was going through it, well, I went through it a lot of years ago, but I taught in a med school up till recently at UCLA, a top medical school in the country. One of my colleagues who taught there, Rob Lufkin, just is releasing a book, The Lies I Taught in Med School, because he realized, like me, we were teaching things based on really outdated knowledge, and the world is changing so quick. And to have a med school curriculum that's 30, 35 years old, and again, there's economic factors behind it. So the more you're in it, the more you understand. But I learned from people like John Sarno and from pioneers who were willing to step out of norms, like in any field of science or medicine or anything, and say, hey, I want to put the boundaries and just seek truth. And I would see it with my patients. So if my patients, when I first learned about acupuncture, said, wow, I have a number of people who now told me this worked better than their pharmaceuticals, I'd go and learn about it and read about it and say, hey, that's something I have to integrate. So yoga, meditation, it was my own life. It was reading from pioneers who were willing to buck the standard a little bit, and, and really just being open-minded and personal experience as a physician.
Did you get any initial backlash or anybody? Because some of these things, I've heard some people who have PhDs and doctors call it like pseudoscience, or, did you get any of that? Like, oh, that doesn't work, or that's pseudoscience, at any type of responses like that?
Sure. I mean, look, fortunately, I had the MD and was an assistant professor at a UCLA School of Medicine. So, at least in our typical how we evaluate things, I came with a lot of the big credentials. So when I said things, I wasn't as likely to be called a quack. But John Sarno, who was also an NYU professor, when he first did it, from within the profession, a lot of doctors were calling him a quack. And I would get that occasionally, but I would balance, because I was never saying there's no basis to traditional medicine. I would just say we have to be open-minded to integrate these things. And look, the older I get, the less I know about anything. The more I know that I know nothing. So that's sort of like, I think, maturing in life. And a lot of our profession, there's a lot of ego in it. A lot of doctors have to no, this is how I learned from my professor, even though, he learned something that's passed down 200 years without a change. So I think, I was always open-minded. Let's just keep seeking truth and knowing that we still don't understand a fraction of how the brain really works, how consciousness works, how the mind works. I always had endless curiosity and I continue to learn, and I love learning. And the more I learn, the more I realize I know very little. So, but I have some optimism about our profession changing. I think the world of psychedelics is making a giant inroad in mental health. I'm very excited about, and I'm involved in that field as well. I think regenerative medicine is really changing things, and really information and AI and our ability to look at big data and pool data, with including pooling all the data we get from alternative therapies is going to really continue to unravel truth and hopefully let us provide better health. But ultimately, we have to move to things in a value-based system that are not for profit, where you get paid having nothing to do with the outcomes. It has to be based on value you provide, and that should include everything complementary and alternative. And it should really be focused on preventative medicine and root causes and lifestyle management. So nutrition, exercise, health, the things we spoke about, mindset. I think people like Joe Dispenza, Tony Robbins are affecting more people positively through mindset, meditation than much of the medical profession. And I'm big fans.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's why I love these type of discussions. I've had Dennis McKenna on in the past a few times, and someone else who's big into plant medicines, and I've had Dr. Tom Cowan, anybody who kind of shatters your worldview. And because much like yourself, I constantly find out that like the way I was looking at something could be completely wrong and incorrect, and somebody has this whole new perspective on health, medicine, the body, consciousness, whatever it may be. So we do have to constantly be skeptical and constantly ask questions, and understand that the science is never settled, that we're constantly learning things and re-observing things, and finding out that maybe the way we looked at things was wrong. So but thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Like I said, I'll put links in the show description for your products, for any other websites or social media platforms you're on that people can follow you, or is your medicalfoods.com the best place to keep up with you?
Instagram, Dr. Michael Sinel, MD. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I think we'll send you all the links. And we have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, but Dr. Michael Sinel and medicalfoods.com. They should get to everything through there, and we'll send you what we need to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I'll send you the show once it's up and live. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we talk again in the near future. This was an awesome conversation. I think you're doing amazing work, and you can really help a lot of people out there. So hopefully people check out the website, follow you on social media, and reach out if they have any questions.
Great. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the noise. It was unexpected.
No worries. Hey, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.